Welcome back, and it's time for us to move on to the second breakout session. But before that, I would like to bring to your notice that we will be launching an e-souvenir of the conference during the closing plenary, that is at around 3:30. So it's time now for us to head into the second breakout session, which is on legal and regulatory reforms for business and economic development. The breakout session on legal and regulatory reforms for business and economic development will dwell on the subject matter related to law reforms. The panel will draw attention towards stressing on what measures can be taken to strengthen our legal regulatory framework by taking areas such as investments, agriculture, and the health sector into consideration. So we will have three prominent personalities joining in this breakout session. We have attorney at law Padmini Valgama joining in. We have Dr. Harsha Cabral and DIG Ajit Rohana, who will be joining in this session. So first and foremost, let me invite and introduce our first speaker to speak about law reforms on investments. Our first speaker is attorney at law Padmini Valgama. She has 42 years experience in the bar, graduated from the University of Colombo in 1977, and she was a legal advisor for Port City Project, Czech Port City Colombo Private Limited from the 25th May 2015 to the 30th of June 2016. She was the executive legal or executive director legal from the 9th of October 2008 to the 10th of May 2015, and as the director legal for senior manager legal from the 4th of November 1998 at the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka. For over 17 years, she worked as a manager prosecution of the Employees Trust Fund Board from April 1991 to 1998 and as a magistrate at the Traffic Court Halfdorf, Colombo 1998 to 1989. And as a practicing lawyer from the year 1979 at the Magistrates Court, Marvanalla and District Court in Kergol. May I now invite attorney at law Padmini Valgama for your address.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all of you. Firstly, I wish to thank OPA Chairman Dulit Pereira and members of the conference committee for inviting me to make this presentation at the 34th annual conference of the OPA, which is significant and prestigious event in the country. To the best of my knowledge, OPA was formed way back in 1975 by about 10 members and at present is the apex body of all professionals in the country, encompassing 52 member associations. I consider it's my privilege to make the presentation to all such distinguished professionals who are present in the audience today. My topic given is reviewing regulations and policies to attract foreign direct investments. First of all, we have to consider why Sri Lanka needs attract foreign direct investment. There are so many important facts. Mainly, I will tell it will support to generate the economic growth and create employments, can help with government revenue and foreign exchange reserves. Other than that, FDI could also strengthen export earnings, foster growth, and assist the country to put its debt on a more sustainable footing. As we all aware, at present, Sri Lanka is facing a big problem because of the COVID-19 badly affected to Sri Lanka's overall economy since March 2020 because of the close down of the country. Hence, it is now very important as Sri Lanka can utilize FDI to recover stronger and greener from the COVID-19 crisis. Before going to the topic, I will briefly explain how Sri Lanka came to identify the foreign direct investment important. When speaking that, when discussing and analyzing foreign investment in Sri Lanka, it is relevant to note that the procedures and policies have changed with the enactment of the Greater Colombo Economic Commission Law number 4 of 1978. It mainly enacted to establish and manage export processing zones as free trade zones to attract and promote foreign investment within Sri Lanka. Later on in the year 1992, the Greater Colombo Economic Commission was reconstituted as the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka, Law number 4, reconstituted as the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka. That is the main institute to attract foreign investment to the country. And that is the main authority promoting and facilitating foreign direct investment to the country. Then what is the framework as empowered the BOI Act to the BOI? The principal law applicable to foreign investment in BOI Law number 4 of 1978, as I said, has amended from time to time, and the regulations made under the Act. BOI is a public authority created to operate within the framework of the described law. BOI is structured to function as a central facilitation point for investors and operates as an autonomous statutory body. Before I go to my topic, I selected some sections in the BOI Act where those sections are very relevant to the foreign investment. That is Section 16 of the BOI Act and Section 17 of the BOI Act and Section 24 of the BOI Act. Section 16 of the BOI Act refers to general powers of the board, and any foreign investor seeking to business in Sri Lanka under the normal laws of the country come through the BOI. And those investors not given any concessions or tax holiday or exempt from the duty-free facility or exchange control regulations, they operate under the normal laws of the country subject to other local investors. Then the mainly under Section 17 of the BOI law, that it's requires to enter into agreement with the investor. Under this agreement, the board is empowered to grant special concessions and exemptions from any law referred to in Schedule B in the Act to enterprises satisfying specific eligibility criteria which are designated to meet strategic economic objectives of the government. The mechanism through which such concessions are granted is via agreement, where it modifies, exempt, and waives identified laws in keeping with BOI regulations. These include laws applicable to Inland Revenue, Foreign Exchange Control Act, Customs Duty, Import Act, Import Control Act, like that. Under Section 17 of the BOI Act, is empowered to enter into agreements with any enterprise. Such agreements constitute a valid and binding contract between the BOI and the enterprise and are valid for lifetime of the enterprise, and it is stressed that successive governments cannot change the provisions of the spirit of the agreement. Then other important section is 24 of the BOI Act, that provides that the minister may, by regulation, determine the scope and extent of any exemption or modification of any of the written laws set out in Schedule B in the BOI Act, which may be embodied or incorporated in any written agreement entered into between BOI and the enterprise. I think Schedule B, those are the laws referred under the Schedule B, the Inland Revenue Act, BO 7, the Custom Ordinance, the Exchange Control Act, the Companies Ordinance, the Merchant Shipping Act, the Finance Act, and Air Navigation Act. Under Section 24 of the BOI Act, as empowers, Minister had the power to vary those things, give what are the concessions to be given to the investor to be considered. Accordingly, BOI regulations are promulgated under Section 24 of the BOI law. I explained those three sections because that directly deal with the foreign investors. Now I go to my topic. I have selected some areas why to review the regulations and policies, and what are those areas. One is BOI regulations. Second is BOI Act to be amended, and Import Control Act powers to be given to the BOI. New export processing zone to be established based on the concept of the GCC Act number 1978. Introduce one-stop shop concept, and labor laws to be considered, clear national policy to be implemented, human resources to be upgraded as per the future requirements of the targeted areas. Sorry, I couldn't tell. Apart from the BOI Act, there are three acts mainly related to the foreign investments in Sri Lanka. Those are the Finance Act number 12 of 2012, as amended, previous slide. That is commercial hub regulations. Those investors comes under that act. They are required to come to the BOI and enter into an agreement with the BOI. Second one is the Strategic Development Projects Act number 14 of 2008. Directly, those agreements also come to BOI and enter into agreements. The third one is Colombo Port City Economic Commission Act number 11 of 2021. Under this act, it is not required the investors to come to the BOI, because under the Colombo Port City Economic Commission Act, the Commission is empowered to give all approvals, licenses, enter into agreements, and all facilities as a single window facilitator. The Colombo Port City Commission will attend to all these matters. Hence, it is not required to enter the investors who wish to invest in within the Colombo Port City area, not required to come to the BOI to enter into agreements. Then I said, why BOI regulations to be reintroduced? I said, under section 24 refers that the minister may be regulation determine the scope and extent of any exemptions, modifications of any of the written laws, or to modify or vary the application of any such laws to such enterprises in accordance with such regulations referred to in Schedule B in the BOI Act. Now, BOI is, though the Section 24 empowers, now it has been suspended by the Finance Ministry, and Inland Revenue Act and the Foreign Exchange Control Act has been removed from the BOI Act. Now, BOI is not in a position to give under their discretion the tax holidays or whatever other concessions given under those two acts. From the inception of 1972 to 2007, nearly 35 BOI regulations have been issued and concessions have been granted to the investors. Although under the BOI Act, BOI is structured to function as a central facilitation point for investors and operates as an autonomous statutory body, BOI is unable to discharge its function independently and effectively due to suspension of implementing BOI regulation and preventing BOI from application of its own regulation. It should be noted that BOI was compelled to conform to inland revenue regulations in all BOI agreements. That is the present situation. This affected the investment climate and damaged the predictability and investor confidence of the investment regime. The abrupt changes to the incentive regime from time to time have sent wrong signals to the investor community, and therefore we need to be cautious to ensure maintaining the credibility of the country as an attractive investment destination. It should be further noted that no regulation was published after the year 2006 and 2007 to grant tax incentives under BOI law. Even though it is essential to introduce an incentive scheme to compete with other regional competitors to attract investments into selected sectors to achieve development goals of the economy, as mentioned, due to suspension of implementing BOI regulations, BOI could not introduce a proper incentive regime on par with the other competitive countries. Under such circumstances, honoring commitments already made to investors is essential, vital, and obligatory to attract future foreign direct investments. It is suggested to formulate and introduce fresh regulations, simplified and clear tax structure, as BOI is empowered to do so. Practical issues are bound to arise where BOI is unable to discharge its function independently and effectively, since granting regulations that were issued in 2006 and 2007 are outdated. I will explain that. I think most of you have seen the BOI regulation. When we formally introduce the BOI regulation, we identify the sectors. What are the IT or tourism or agriculture, manufacturing, like that. And in the when stipulating the BOI regulation, it's there that what are the sectors, what are the minimum investment to do, and cut-off dates, and the concession tax holiday period, and preferential tax holiday period, and exemption from the exchange control regulation, and the custom duty, all are there laid down, clearly stipulated in the BOI regulation. That's very clear to the investors at a glance what they are getting for their investment. Now it is very very complicated, as the investors have to go through not the BOI regulations, but the Inland Revenue Act and Import Control Act, like that. So it is very complicated, the BOI investors today they are facing. Then why BOI Act to be amended? Inland Revenue Act and Exchange Control Act indicated in Schedule B were taken out from the BOI Act, as I mentioned earlier, in order to promulgate regulations as empowered under Section 22 of the BOI law and incorporate such incentives in the BOI agreement to ensure the credibility of the country as an attractive investment destination. It is essential that the BOI Act to be amended, replacing Inland Revenue Act and Exchange Control Act as indicated in the Schedule B. Even the Finance Act number 12 of 2012, as I told, that under commercial hub regulations, the investors are required to come to the BOI. Even the Schedule B, when amending the BOI Act, if it can be also included in the Schedule B, that's better for the investors. Foreign investors would expect the government to be responsive to their needs in a timely manner, and would further expect the process of investing in Sri Lanka to be understandable. Though BOI declares that it facilitates investors in all aspects for smooth operation of respective projects, investors have to visit many authorities to obtain authorizations like Inland Revenue Department, Exchange Control Department, and Import Control Department, because those acts are now removed from the Schedule B of the BOI Act. Now, BOI must be fully empowered to administer all investment laws and ensure that all relevant government agencies fall in line as wide powers were granted to the BOI at its inception. Then other one I identified, the Import Control Act, negative list items. Treasury has issued negative list items which are not permitted to be imported on duty-free basis. In this regard, BOI had the discretion to allow or disallow duty-free imports by investors based on non-availability of the items meeting specified quality and required quantity. From 2013, BOI has been requested to obtain the concurrence of the Ministry of Finance when granting duty-free imports to BOI enterprises. This condition has complicated the smooth functioning of the approval process and also resulted in undue delays, because once the investor submitted their import list, BOI has to take that list to the Finance Ministry and get their approval, what are the items to be import or not allow. Earlier, the BOI had the discretion allow or disallowed. I suggest that also to be changed. Then, other than that, in order to expand the opportunities invest in Sri Lanka, I suggest and government and BOI to take necessary steps to establish new export processing zones in line with concept under the Greater Colombo Economic Commission Law Number 4 of 1978, now known as BOI Act, which was mainly enacted to establish and manage export processing zones as free trade zones. Area of authority like Katunayaka and Biyagama, it is very clearly they have outlined the things, because the investors who comes to invest in Katunayaka and Biyagama zones, they are not required to go to any other places to get their approvals, engineering approvals, building approvals like that. It is under the area of authority, under the GCC Act, it has been empowered to the board to establish the license zones as well as export processing zones, which contain with paved road network, treated water, power supply methods to minimize environment pollution, noise emissions, sewage, solid waste systems like that. As empowered under Section 22A, the President can declare suitable areas for establishment of license zones where BOI can be authorized to exercise certain powers under the BOI law. That's very important area to consider in the present situation. I think BOI has identified some important sectors. I therefore suggesting under powers empowered to the President of the country under Sections 22A to establish new export processing zones, enabling the new investors to come and locate their projects. Then one-stop shop concept. Why need to introduce one-stop shop concept? An innovative one-stop shop to help investors to obtain all official approvals. That concept was there when President Premadasa's time, that 200 garments program, it's very successfully implemented because the one-stop shop concept was there. So the BOI one-stop shop concept must be reintroduced, and necessary steps taken to locate such administrative sections under one roof in order to expediently facilitate the investor rather than send them from pillar to post, to maintain a consistent flow of getting in foreign direct investments and ensuring a smooth, timely, hassle-free experience to the investor. At present, the BOI assists investors to obtain required approval through coordination with required line agencies. This procedure is time-consuming. Hence, the requirement of a one-stop shop concept is very important to receive approvals on an expedited basis. Now, it is very easy to do, as BOI directly comes under the purview of the president of the country. One-stop shop means that under one roof, the Inland Revenue Department, Customs Department, and Import Control, and Exchange Control, Central Environmental Authority, and what other related line agencies, they can operate under one roof. That is very easy to get the approval and other authorization for the investors, rather than sending them pillars to post to get their approvals. Then other important thing is Land Act to be amended. For the first time in Sri Lanka, a law was introduced imposing 100% tax on transfer of property to non-citizens. That time, any investor, after paying 100% land transfer tax, they could have purchased the land and locate their project. This land tax was removed by Finance Act number 11 of 2002, and again reintroduced by Finance Act number 8 of 2004 with some additional provisions, and accordingly above 100% transfer tax was not applicable for selected BOI projects. Provided that the total value of land is met by inward remittances of foreign currency and other specific areas stipulated in the Gazette notifications issued under the Finance Act number 2008. The above Finance Act has been repealed, and a new land restrictions on alienation Act number 38 of 2014 has been promulgated. Under that act, it is again prohibited outright transfer of lands to foreigners, even paying 100% tax, or identify BOI projects, all prohibited outright transfer of lands to foreigners. Sri Lankan companies with 50% or above foreign shareholding owe to foreign companies an introduction of new land lease tax to these entities at the rate of 15% and 7.5%. However, by Land Restrictions and Alienation Act number 3 of 2017 removes only the tax which was payable on the lease of land by foreigners. With this regard, issues arising through this Land Act has been directly limited to 49% due to the restrictions introduced for outright transfers of lands by the new Land Act. Majority of the shares of the projects are owned by the local investors, which transfers the management powers to them. This situation discourages foreign investors in invest in Sri Lanka, and the country has become less competitive as an investment destination. Unnecessary legal issues have arisen due to this procedure, and therefore investors would resort to illegal procedures to avoid foreign ownership. An outright transfer by a company with less than 50% foreign shareholding, which has to be maintained for 20 consecutive years, is considered by investors as an desirably long period for arriving at business decisions to expand and develop the establishment of the project. Therefore, considering such issues, Sri Lanka needs a clearly defined land policy in order to attract foreign direct investment. Other area identified is labor laws must be revisited. The industrial law of a country is also an important factor considered by the investor. In Sri Lanka, the industrial law consists of entirely 40 labor statutes. The industrial law of Sri Lanka is a complicated web to many in management positions unless they have special knowledge in industrial law. Managing the BOI force is also managing the labor force is also an integral part of foreign investment. Labor law amendments and regulations which deal with various aspects of employment should be codified or consolidated to provide easy access to managers. Lengthy and costly termination procedure and the Industrial Dispute and Workmen's Compensation Act should be amended for easy adaptation and understanding by the foreign investment. Payment of compensation for termination of employment is the other impact. Hence, the Industrial Dispute Act and the Workmen's Compensation Special Provisions Act, which deal with awarding compensations to termination of employment, prescribe the calculation of the minimum limit of compensation that may be awarded. Those are the issues under the labor laws of the country the foreign investors are facing. Then the policy is to be reviewed by the government. This is the most important thing that government attention should be given. In order to offer a stable and conducive investment climate in Sri Lanka, needs to take several measures. It is not only legal framework that facilitates FDI, there are more important factors such as peace and stability, and we, Sri Lanka, achieve the same now. A strong and established investor-friendly policy with a clear mandate is very important. Policy uncertainty, high fragmentation in policy making, frequent policy changes, and slow policy implementation badly affected, and Sri Lanka has proven daunting for investors with a lack of information on regulations. Long-term policy strategies can serve continuously in support of the government vision. Sri Lanka must adopt a clear national policy on foreign investments. In particular, government needs to ensure that the tender process for public works and infrastructure projects is fully transparent and reliable, especially in public-private partnership agreements. As most of the infrastructure projects, the government tender process must be transparent and reliable. Other thing, the embassies, Sri Lankan embassies and trade missions must be proactive in promoting the country's potential, not by promoting on brochure and presentations, but rather through delivery on promises made and practically doing so. Ensure that Sri Lanka has bilateral agreements with key economies in all countries. Bilateral, multilateral, and regional agreements will convey that Sri Lanka is open for businesses with the world. It is required to establish a reputation for reliability, at least in terms of the government-sponsored project, which it intends and has the financial wherewithal to compete. All of this and more, and strong indicators of the viability of Sri Lanka's long-term strategy to achieve greater economic prosperity and international political recognition. Apart from that, government leaders, including other political parties, business leaders, professionals, commitment is essential to work out a framework and a plan to increase direct foreign investments, supporting and strengthening its long-standing democratic institution of free markets and expanding both the nature and depth of the bilateral relationships are important. Other very important thing, the government has to take steps to introduce an efficient, secure, and transparent e-digital system where the public services available online. Result will be a hassle-free environment for business and entrepreneurship. Example, Estonia is the most advanced digital society in the world. 99% of the public services are available online. In Sri Lanka at present, we have the facility, online facility, only for registrar of companies and the customs department. Sri Lanka has great potential to become an international business and commercial center for South Asia. It requires the full attention and commitment of the government and the BOI, and above are the factors to be considered by the government as well as the BOI in order to attract foreign direct investment in future. Other thing is human resources. Why human resources important for attract FDI? The tremendous studies forward made by Sri Lanka in raising race and skilled and semi-skilled workforce, developing a framework and plan to encourage increased foreign direct investment. Human resources development is needed for different sectors and must be projected based on viable assumptions, and appropriate vocational skills development projects must have initiated. Universities and higher education institutions should be geared, enabling graduating students to obtain employment in identified targeted sectors as indeed. Accordingly, revise university courses to match the demand of the industry and future employability opportunities. The quality of technical skills should be enhanced and improved, targeting emerging economic sectors. Vocational training centers, technical colleges to school leavers to provide required trained employees in category-wise into linkage with general education and higher education. Those are the things I identified to review the regulations and policies with regard to the foreign direct investment, attract foreign direct investment. Apart from that, in shortly, it is essential to formulate a clear legal framework with investor-friendly law and update all laws for a better understanding, especially labor laws, judicial process, industrial dispute, and arbitration like that, and custom inquiries, necessary legislature in place of arbitration process as slow and time consuming. That also we have to look at those aspects also to attract foreign direct investment in Sri Lanka in future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Attorney at Law Padmini Valgamal, for your very insightful presentation and a very informative one, I may say. And we will be having our next speaker joining in virtually, and he will be speaking on law reforms on agriculture sector. Our second speaker is Dr. Harsha Cabral. He's the President's Counsel in Sri Lanka with 34 years experience in the field of company law, intellectual property, commercial law, securities laws, international trade law, and commercial arbitration. He has been a President's Counsel for 15 years and commands an extensive practice in the commercial high courts and the Supreme Courts of Sri Lanka. He holds a doctorate in corporate law from the University of Canberra, Australia, and he is also a former sitting member of the International Chamber of Commerce International Court of Arbitration in Paris and a representative member of the Federation of Integrated Conflict Management, as well as a representative member of the International Commercial Disputes Tribunal, and he is also a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators. Dr. Cabral is a member of the Board of Investment, BOI, of Sri Lanka, a member of the Law Commission of Sri Lanka, a member of the Intellectual Property Advisory Commission in Sri Lanka, and also the chairman of the Intellectual Property Law Reform Project of the Ministry of Justice. He is a member of the Ministerial Committee appointed to reform commercial arbitration in Sri Lanka, and a member of the Corporate Governance Faculty and the Corporate Governance Committee of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. He is also a member of the Council of Legal Education in Sri Lanka and University Grants Commission nominee on the Postgraduate Institute of Medicine. I would now like to invite our second speaker to speak on law reforms on agriculture sector, Dr. Harsha Cabral.